Okay, welcome in today's episode, Alex. Actually, let me give the floor directly to you. Maybe you can introduce yourself on who you are, what your background is, and what your company does.
Sure. Thanks, Jan. Yeah, great to be here. Obviously, nice to be invited by your colleague Johan, who I met so recently. So, yeah, my name's Alex Theuma, CEO founder at Saastock. Saastock helps SaaS founders and their companies grow to 10 million ARR. It's really kind of our sweet spot and where we help SaaS founders the most.
Okay.
We do this through our events, our content media, and our memberships offering.
Okay, very cool. And do you have a specific geographic focus with your business?
Yeah, I mean, we're global. We have a global audience. We are geographically ourselves almost all based in Europe, and therefore we have our kind of big flagship conference is in Europe, and that flagship conference, which is happening in October, sort of this year, you'll see probably 80% of the attendees will be European and 20% sort of the rest of the world. But if you look at like who consumes our content, probably most, the biggest market is the US for us. And then Europe sort of comes after that. So definitely a global organization. In 2019, we actually did 5 conferences in 5 continents. So we were in the US, in LATAM, Australia, Asia, and Europe. That I'm not sure if we'd repeat that again, certainly with the size of the team that we had. But yeah, we've definitely looked at that kind of global view. SaaS has been global for a long time, and I think most of the content is relevant for any SaaS founder or company, no matter where you are. There are obviously some nuances in certain markets, but in general, the things that we talk about, in growth and scaling and playbooks, etc., are very valid for whether you're a founder in Rio, or you're a founder in New York, or in Sweden, or whatever.
So this conference in October is intended for mainly the founders and people that work at SaaS companies.
Yes, yeah, correct. So a gathering of SaaS founders that are that have built and are growing and scaling their businesses. And generally, what we see in terms of the attendees, there it's the SaaS founders. They bring their exec team kind of with them, and that would be the main sort of makeup and an audience.
Right.
But because we bring all these SaaS founders, that obviously attracts a lot of investors and VCs, right? So we had about 400 VCs at our 2019 event, and we're probably expecting around about 500 plus for this year's event. So pretty much every VC that is in SaaS will have some sort of representation there, and a shed load of meetings happen during the few days in Dublin, and a lot of deals get done. So we're very much known for that as well, but as well as the content and the networking and all the fun that happens in Dublin.
Right. So the conference is about learning how to scale your business to 10 million, about meeting VCs to help you to get there, and about networking.
Yeah, exactly. You're meeting, stepping out of the business for a few days to kind of work on the business, rather than in the business, to kind of get inspired, to meet your peers, to help you get stuck out of, from getting, feeling stuck in a rut, coming away, with actionable, ideas to work on your business. Now, the theme this year is velocity boosted. And we want, and our objective, and my objective is that every single person that comes to the event, they're going to leave with hopefully multiple things that are going to help them grow their SaaS business faster, right? We want to help them boost their velocity. So through every talk, every engagement, every interaction, we're designing it so that'll be hopefully what they come away with. So whether you're just kind of looking, some people come just to watch the content from the great speakers that we have there, right? And then they get their notebook out, and you're coming away with like lots of great ideas to kind of share with the business. Some people come with a big team, divide and conquer, and kind of share the learnings, and then also work on the business development side of things. Some people come just for the networking and the meetings to try and find new partners for their business. Some just do VC meetings, and very few come just for the fun. But some do just that, right? But overall, I think there's the kind of the full package. Try and do a bit of everything.
Okay. And is the theme inspired on? I think I heard a VC say it used to be triple, triple, double, 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 and now it has to be triple, 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 double, double. Is that what inspired this theme?
Actually, no, and I didn't know there was that update. But yeah, I think it was Neeraj Agrawal from Battery Ventures who came up with that T2D3 framework. And so now it's whatever the new acronym is for it. But no, it's not inspired from that. Actually, I would say it's inspired from there's a piece of like content and that we saw a few years ago, and some data that's come from, I don't, you must have heard of Vern Harnish from Scaling Up, and we saw a statistic that only 4% of SaaS companies make it past 1 million in ARR. According to this statistic, and I'm pretty sure it's well researched, right? And I guess it probably, whilst it looks shocking or feels shocking, when you think most businesses, whether SaaS or not, don't survive, right? Most startups don't make it. So 4% of businesses get to 1 million. It's a great milestone if you've achieved that. And then getting to 10 million, the number is 0.4%, right? And then so the odds are stacked against you. And one of the big reasons kind of cited is that people kind of get, or companies get sucked into these valleys of death. And once you're in the valley of death, and if you could see the chart, and I'm sure people have probably seen it before, but it's very difficult to get out. And you can get out, but then you're spending all your time firefighting and trying to get out of that, and that kind of really slows you down. And so what is one of the big reasons that Vern kind of cites from this 0.4% statistic to get 10 million revenue? It's around velocity or lack of it, right? If you're not growing fast enough in that kind of one straight line, and if you're doing this all the time, you're losing your or you're increasing the odds of failing. So what we're looking at, that we want to help SaaS founders and companies overcome these odds. Like, we want in some way to hopefully make a difference to this 0.4%, so it can become 1% or whatever it can become. So that kind of gave us the theme and the inspiration for Velocity Boosted for this year.
Okay, cool, makes sense. So I guess that means that other SaaS companies that have made it to the other side and have avoided the valley of death will be sharing experiences on best practices, repeatable processes.
100%. Yeah, exactly. So we'll get, and we already have, I think, we've got some decacorns on the stage. So I'm sure you're familiar with the decacorn term. But so Daniel Dines, who's the CEO founder of UiPath, I think it was Europe's first SaaS decacorn, is speaking. We've got a number of unicorns now. There's so many unicorns; they're not that rare anymore. But we got a number of unicorns on stage as well, including the CEO of Paddle, the CEO of Papaya Global, a number of founders that are in the the Forbes Cloud 100. But as well, what we recognize, that it's fantastic that we can get the founders and the CEOs of these huge companies to come and speak to our audience in the Saastock community. But if we look at the Saastock community, I think, like we said, most of the founders and the attendees there will be under 10 million. They'll probably be near 1 million, or even less than 1 million, right? So we can't just have the decacorns on stage saying how we got to a 10 billion valuation and here are the things we did. I mean, that's great and it's very inspirational and there'll be some practical stuff. But we also look to get a lot of founders and execs and operators on stage that are at the kind of just a few steps ahead. So in some cases they might not necessarily be the biggest names, but maybe they've got to 10 million in revenue and they can tell you how they did it. And I think with that you get a lot of content that is much more applicable to the audience. So we look to ensure that we're not just having the unicorns and decacorns on the stage, but we also, sprinkle them around.
Okay, very cool. So on the one hand, you have the ones that made it all the way to the top, sharing their past experiences, how they did it, but then also some that are closer to the people that want to grow to 10 million, and they recently grew to that, and they can share what they've been doing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very good. And of course, every business is different. So you come and learn, and you apply the lessons that you hear to your own product, to your own business, to your own situation, and then create your own playbooks on how are we going to scale our sales, our marketing, our employees, our business, and find the right product market fit.
Yes.
And it is. I've seen in I've been in SaaS world for about 20 years now. I've seen that a lot of companies have a great idea, but they forget that execution is the hardest part, and they also forget that continuous learning and in my opinion, going to a conference is critical for that. Is continuous learning from your peers, and not always everything you learn at a conference is going to be applicable to you, but you'll be able to take that information and say, this is how this may apply to our business. We may not be able to grow as quick as UiPath because we don't have all the money or the resources or whatever they had. However, these are some lessons that they've seen and that we can use for our business.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. So there are, I think, like we said earlier, maybe when we weren't recording, there are kind of tried and tested, things, levers, strategies, playbooks that people can implement and have implemented, and a lot of that kind of gets shared as well. But obviously, within each business, there are nuances, and there is not, we think, one playbook that kind of like fits all, or kind of one road and one path that fits everybody, right? Obviously, there are many different flavors of SaaS companies, and depending on your ACV, your target market, and I guess kind of actual TAM and so on and so forth. But yeah, like ultimately, people will kind of get that flavor, and depending on what I guess the good thing, like for those that are coming to a Saastock conference, is that there'll be, I think there'll be something like 200 speakers. So let's imagine that there's going to be something like, I don't know, 100 plus sessions. You can't attend them all, but you'll go to the ones that are kind of relevant to you and your business, right, and learn. And so if you want to scale to the US, you'll attend likely the sessions that are focused on that topic, right? And again, that is kind of one of those things that if you're looking to, if you're a European SaaS company and looking to get to 10 million in revenue, again, quite topical. That I see this content every year, but in different flavors. But founders and VCs specifically, often coming up with the content about how to scale into the US, right? And we see that, and done in a different way each year, at Saastock, and things like that. So depending on where you want to learn, what you're currently doing within your business, what stage you're at, you go and kind of choose and curate your own, agenda and watch those specific talks.
Okay, cool. And for you as an observer, and you're obviously looking at a lot of SaaS companies simultaneously. What would your one or two advices be to let's look at the first group. We're now apparently 96% is failing to get from 0 to 1 million. So let's pretend I have this great idea. I've built my MVP, and I've sort of figured out a few customers that are kind of interested in the product. What are the key things I should focus on to get to 1 million?
To get to 1 million, yeah. So it's a good question. So I think first of all, we're looking at the product like right at the beginning. You've got the idea. You've got to speak to your customers, right? You really got to don't go ahead and build, without speaking to the customers. I think that's where you get probably most failures, where you get the eager founder that has got this great idea and just goes ahead and builds it, and then they find that actually nobody wanted that product, right? So go and do your customer development, speak to customers, learn from their I think kind of pain points and feedback, to then kind of really kind of hone and shape that product, which will then, I think, a lot of that work together with understanding your ICP and that kind of focus will help you get to product market fit. If you're delivering value, you've created something that people want. Then obviously you've got to have the ability to kind of sell that. If you're a technical founder, I think sometimes that might be a challenge, and you've got to see like maybe coming out of your comfort zone. One founder I know, Alexander Theuma, who bootstrapped his SaaS company. It's like a multi-product SaaS company, but it's probably about 15 million ARR now. His technical founder, you're probably an introvert, I would say. Not really one for you would naturally be at the sales kind of front line, but as the founder, you kind of have to, right, put himself out there. And I remember him saying to me that he did the first 1,000 demos, for the product, right? And with that, so he led sales, and by doing that, obviously he knew the product better than anybody, but he was also then getting all the feedback from the customers and what's also working on what they liked about the product, what's working with the pitch or not, and getting all that feedback to getting it to the point where actually, okay, now like I've done 1,000 demos, pretty sure like I know what is working in the direction, and now I can hand this over to the sales team and kind of coach them and give them the right direction. So I think that's kind of like pretty important if you built the product that customers want by getting their feedback. If you focus on the ICP, and have that narrow focus on a specific customer, the founder leads the sales, certainly to the first million in revenue, a bit like Saravana, and I think also because you're going to probably have the most traction, get the most learnings from that. I would say some of these are some of the key things that you need to do. I spoke to another founder today who I think they got it was like 300K ARR, and basically getting their first 10 customers that he sold to got them to 300K ARR, and he got those 10 customers because they were previous customers of his when he worked at another business where he decided actually I could create this myself, and then he took those customers kind of with him as well and got to 300K ARR pretty quickly. So yeah.
Okay. So and I agree with you here. I've done a few SaaS startups now, and I agree that you first maybe even $500,000 of sales. As a founder, you should probably lead those sales, not only because you know how to sell the product and because you probably are better in sales than you think, even if you have a technical background, but also because you understand much more and come to a better ICP by giving so many demos and by talking to so many customers because very frequently your product is going to end up in a different market than you maybe thought when you were getting started with the business, based on what it can do for certain markets. And then looking at the next step, which is, so you're at 1 million, so you're in the lucky 4%. I feel kind of good now because I've been there a couple of times in that 4%. So let's say you're in the 4% that made it to the million. So that essentially, typically would mean that there is proof that there is a market, that there is revenue for your business. And now you want to scale to 10 million. So you probably can't do this by yourself anymore as a founder. So you really need to start scaling up, hiring sales, hiring marketing. Should the focus be spread across all of that, or more on messaging, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, I guess it depends. Like so definitely, so you're at 1 million, you've got product market fit, right? And now it's about the go to market fit and scaling up to 10 million. How you do it. I've seen probably a lot of organizations really still focus on that, the sales side, and be very kind of sales led and start building out that sales team and building out the sales playbook. And I've seen companies do not a lot of marketing still, like maybe until they get to like 5 million sort of ARR, and still be very kind of like sales led. But if that only obviously makes sense if your ACV is at a certain price point where you're looking at maybe customers spending 15 grand or 15,000, 20,000, plus sort of a year, sort of with you. Obviously, if you're selling to SMB, then likely you're not going to be a sales-led organization, and you're going to go more heavily on the marketing side of things, and look at really scaling out the marketing organization, demand gen, doing paid ads, doing content marketing, and investing heavily in that. Examples would be companies like Leadfeeder or Chartmogul that took that approach. Probably heavy investment in content marketing and thought leadership, which then really kind of took them to well, I certainly know Leadfeeder are past 10 million ARR, and on their price point is so low that they don't really, I think, have the sales team. They don't need to kind of sell the product. But yeah, I would think, like, if you're selling to the enterprise or a higher ACV kind of product at $1 million, you start to bring in maybe not necessarily a VP of sales. It sort of like depends, but certainly senior sales, maybe a director of sales that has ideally kind of some experience and would probably be the person that will get you to 5 million, maybe get you to 10 million. You'll have obviously different salespeople or different people in general, like across roles, will perform certain capabilities to get you to certain milestones, but they might not be the person that gets you from 1 million to 10. It's probably not going to be the right person to get you to 100 million as well. But yeah, so depends on the business, but definitely that investment in sales and marketing. And of course, I mean, like, we don't necessarily go into it, but like, constant investment in the product. And I think it's table stakes these days, right? People talk about product-led growth, and product is the maybe like the soup du jour sort of these days, where I think maybe 5 years ago, maybe you could correct me on that, maybe more, you could have a shitty SaaS product but a great sales team, and you could probably build a 10 million, 100 million, sort of business. And maybe some of those shitty SaaS products are still kind of out there today, but have been made slightly better. But I think nowadays you can't win with a shitty SaaS product because there's so much competition. So you can't start with a shitty SaaS product. So you've got to have a great SaaS product and keep investing in that as well. So product led is super important.
It sounds like there are more and more VCs coming to these conferences. Would you say that when you're, let's pretend you did 1 million and you've mainly done it bootstrap, maybe some friends and family, would you say that is the moment to start raising capital, or later down the road?
It can be earlier, but it really sort of depends. It really does depend. So I've seen companies that are, obviously they're raising like pre-seed, right? I mean, pre-seed exists where you have no revenue, you have no metrics, but you just have an idea, and almost like you've got an idea which is on the back of a napkin, and you can get investment on that. And I've seen those cases. Now, how have they managed to do it? I think in many instances, it's because it's probably a founder that's already had an exit, right? And he's come up with an idea, and they'll receive investment because of their credentials. And that's a real bet from the VC, right? But obviously, if you get to seed stage, the VCs want to see metrics. They want to see certain growth rates. You probably need to have, like, I don't know, 40K MRR or something like that, maybe 10K. It sort of depends, right? But you've got to have some good metrics, growth rates, and obviously still a great idea and a great team. So I don't think you need to be at $1 million. Obviously, being at $1 million kind of puts you in a kind of stronger position. And that will be helpful. But I think there are a lot of kind of like options, sort of like these days. We're seeing more and more bootstrap companies. I spoke to a company that's sort of been bootstrapped. It's taken 10 years, but they're bootstrapped and they're close to 100 million, in revenue. The founder owns 97% of the business, right? Not a bad place to be with that. But if you're coming to Saastock and you're looking to raise, I think you've just got to think about, think in advance, like what stage obviously you're at, what metrics you have, who are the right VCs that you should be speaking to, do some research in advance. Think about the VC's thesis, where they invest. So it's no point going to like a growth stage investor, but you don't have any metrics and you're pre-revenue or something like that, right? So I think you've got to think about it kind of properly. But it depends. Again, like if you're at $1 million and you want to build $100 million business and you want to do it fast, VC might be the better option, because generally bootstrapping is the slower of the two. But we are seeing, but there are not that many, but we are seeing more bootstrap companies that are getting to 100 million in revenue, which is good to see.
Yeah, and I guess it also depends on your risk profile. And I've been in both situations. So my first company was bootstrapped. The new business I just started with Johan, we raised 400,000 euros based on an idea on a napkin. And if anybody wants to read about that, we posted it publicly, how we raised the money and why we raised the money on inside.playbookify.io. So go ahead but again, and I agree with you, it depends on your risk profile. Do you want to take the risk on yourself and fund it yourself as a founder? Do you want to get other people involved for whatever reasons? It could be just financial. In our case, we also did it for the network effect. We got money from 28 investors. So we also have 28 people supporting and committed to our success. And I agree with your observation that further down the road, it also depends on, do you want to grow quickly with the associated risk and get venture capital on board, or do you want to grow slowly and do it with the cash that's coming into the business? They're both viable options. I do notice, and maybe this should be a reason to go to your conference, that in general, founders are not very well informed about the VC landscape. So who's who should I be talking to, and what stage? My personal complaint would be that VCs are not always very clear on their website. It would be great if VCs just said on the website, if you're doing this and you're looking at growing this quick and you're looking at this sort of valuation, then you should talk to us. They're always very vague. Do they do that on purpose because they want to talk to everybody?
Good question. I mean, I've not asked them that, but yeah, it is strange because they almost all have a very specific thesis. And as you say, maybe it's not always super clear what that thesis is. So what I see, I mean, you're right. Like I had a founder reach out sort of yesterday, and he said, look, and actually they're bootstrapped to a couple of million ARR, are now looking to go down the venture path. Wanted to understand who are the right VCs to speak to, right? So I said, I'm happy to kind of help that, or speak to him kind of on that. But yeah, you do often get a lot of founders that will just get a whole list of VCs, not do any research, and just kind of start reaching out to all of them. But maybe if they'd done their research, they would have found the right ones. But again, as you said, maybe it's just also not always that easy, right? Just to understand who are the right ones, and however, like the VCs are not making it, as easy as could be. So you get, let's say, the 400 VCs that came to the last Saastock in Dublin. They probably, through the networking apps and other means, are being contacted by huge amounts of founders, and in return, the founders are not getting responses because, unbeknownst to them, that VC is just not specifically interested in that stage of company or type of company. Or company with those sort of metrics, right? But sometimes that feedback is not always coming back to them. But maybe I think more education around that to both sides could be helpful.
Maybe a great extra topic for your conference is how to find the right VC in just a few clicks. That would be magic if that would exist.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll see what we can do to help improve that, and improve the chances of people finding the right VCs, and then getting the investment that will help them continue growing their business.
Because I've seen quite a few initiatives to sort of build up a centralized VC database, but as far as in I've been seeing, none of them have been very good or successful. Or are you seeing that differently?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. You're right. I mean, I observe from a through like social media and things like that, that there are a number of VC lists and databases and so on and so forth. Right. Personally, I'm not necessarily going into them and kind of checking it all out and seeing what is a good resource versus what is a bad resource. I know that they kind of all like exist out there. I think like Saastock would be kind of well placed again to like do something similar. But again, if it's kind of like already out there in the market, I'm not necessarily sure. You know whether it's something that we kind of need to spend sort of like time time doing. But there are like people look for VC lists. They do exist. People are kind of pulling them together. But again, it's like how specific, how niche, are they? But who knows? There might be one for just B2B SaaS investors, for those that invest in Europe, and you can segment that and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think if people kind of search online, they'll be able to find probably the right lists for them.
Okay. All right. Well, we're getting towards the end of our 30 minutes here, and well, I've learned a few lessons. In general, I would say, first of all, if remain educated, go to conferences and figure out which ones are the best for you. And it sounds like yours is a pretty good one, especially if you're European and want to grow and are interested in going international. I would say. Then once you're at 1 million and you've sort of figured out your ICP, then it's time to start growing. Then it's time to talk to the 400 and something VCs, 500 this year, to grow your business, and perhaps the conference is a good place to come and figure out the correct one. But really, in your first phase, focus on how can I make scaling a repeatable and predictable process by documenting what you're doing and trying to find out the patterns to become successful. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Alex.
Cheers, Jan. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Enjoyed it.